Ghosts of the Moor. Now, I know you're thinking, Marco, your image is blurry. It's not the image, it's the box. At least this part of the box. It is blurry, I guess, precisely to give us the sense of this ghostly glowing that pervades the night. As our explorers run through the forest, they're trying to dodge the ghosts and to collect treasures. Now, the game is played on this board here that has a track, and on this track you will place randomly tiles that represent the treasures and ghosts. Most of the track you will place stacks of 2 tiles each, as you can see. In the final section is only 1 tile per space, and then you have a number of spaces that do not have any tiles on them. We'll see how that affects the gameplay. Here you have a stack of victory point tiles. As you can see, the value of these tiles decrease as you go down. Your explorers will run through the forest, and then as they leave the forest, they will take the highest value available tile, if there still are any available. The game continues until all explorers belonging to all players have left the forest. At that point, you will score points for the sets of artifacts or treasures that you have, for those bonus tiles that you have. If you have tiles representing ghosts at the end of the game, then for each of them you lose the number of points indicated on the ghost itself. Add points, subtract points. The player with the most victory points at the end of the game wins the game. Now, each player has a team of explorers. How many you actually use depends on the number of players. Also, each team has a plank, and we'll see what you do with that plank. The die. Yes, this is a roll and move game. I know many of us serious hobby players dread that mechanic, but the problem with that is usually a lot of randomness and not many decisions. Yeah, you have a lot of randomness, but you can still make some decisions, especially if you have many team members. The general idea is, when it is your turn, you roll the die, and then you need to move one of your team members by that number of spaces on the track towards the exit, the one with the bonus tiles that I showed you earlier. So when you have multiple ones, you can choose which one to activate. At the beginning of the game, well, you don't have that choice. Everybody's here in the starting area, and so you just move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, for example. And then later, suppose I roll this one, then I could choose to start another one or to move that one, and so you will have multiple people on the board, and so will your opponent. Now, how you interact with the spaces on the board. Usually you interact with a space on the board as you leave the space. The only exception is that if you're entering a space and there is no tile and you have a plank, you can choose as you land on a space at the end of your movement to place a plank there. I know, pretty mysterious, but we will see what that means. So that's the only thing that you do as you land on a space. The most important things are what happens when you leave a space. If you leave a space and there's a tile there and you are the only explorer in that tile, you move as normal, but you also pick up a tile and you place it in your personal scoring area, like in that case. And then next turn I move that explorer. Again, the explorer is alone on that space, but this time, ouchie, I take a ghost instead. If you're moving from an area and someone else is there with you, well, then you just move. You don't get the tile. I guess they're both fighting, you reach a stall situation. That means maybe you are on a ghost and you're waiting for somebody to get there, and then you leave and you let them stuck with the ghost. However, having ghosts is not always as bad because there are chances of dropping them off. Again, here's the rule. If you're on a tile and you're alone, as you leave the tile, you get the tile. If there are multiple tiles, you get the one on top. If you're leaving an empty space, you can see all empty spaces have symbols printed on them. If you leave an empty space, if you have a matching tile, a treasure of that kind, you have to drop it there, which is bad. You collected the treasure, you want to bring it with you, but too bad. If I, for example, had a mask had a mask and I'm leaving that space, then I had to place the mask there. If I don't have the matching artifact and I'm leaving a space with no tile, then I can leave a ghost instead. I can drop off a ghost, or if I don't have that one, I have to drop 2 artifacts, which is also pretty tragic. So pretty much when you collect ghosts early on, you will want them to land on spaces that show artifacts that you don't have. This way you can drop off a ghost instead and you don't have to pay penalties. You may in fact want to collect some ghosts precisely so you don't have to drop off 2 artifacts or any artifact. But then of course that means that as their first explorer is dropping off ghosts, you're making things tougher for the opponent possibly, but also from your other people, because then of course if they're getting ghosts late in the game, they may not be able to drop them off. So the board will change as you go along, because the ghosts will move around. It looks like they start following somebody and then they stop chasing them later on during the game. You will pick up artifacts and drop off artifacts. And remember the plank, and now you probably see what the plank is for. If I am getting there, I don't have any ghosts, but most importantly I have this one. Then if I land there and later when I leave that, I have to drop off my artifacts. So as I land there, I don't want to do that. Luckily enough, I still have, say, my plank, and then I get there. Hooray! Also remember, this is something that took us a little while to figure out. Remember, when you leave a spot, if you are alone on that spot, you get to pick up a tile. That also applies to your trusty plank. Pretty much that means if you land on a space that doesn't have anything in it, you can drop the plank there. And if you're still alone by the end of the turn, as you leave it, you bring it with you. Again, it's counterintuitive, but even thematically, you put the plank down, you walk through it, and then you collect it and you carry it with you. But that also means that as I am there, then I did the plank thing, somebody gets there, now I have the choice. I can move someone else if I still have people around, or, well, I can leave and then deal with whatever space I'm in, but then when this player will move, the player will pick up the plank, and that's how planks may change hands. So, as you also imagine a couple of other things, so at the beginning of the game you don't have all the choices because you maybe have 0 explorers on the board, and towards the end of the game, of course, your choices also narrow as more and more of your explorers have left the board. Then you maybe have only 2 and maybe you only have 1, so you have to plan ahead because randomness will increase as the game progresses. In any case, roll your die, move one of your explorers, pick up tiles as you go, put down a plank as you land, if you so wish. Continue like this, pick up bonus tiles as you exit the board, if any are still available. At the end of the game, the player with the most points, after taking ghost penalties, is the winner of the game. And as for how you calculate points, it is based on sets of artifacts. So don't go around just picking up artifacts here and there just because they look neat. Having a lot of different artifacts of different kinds is kind of dangerous, because then it's more likely that you will have a matching icon. What you want to do is to specialize in certain artifacts, because also, as you can see, you score points based on sets of matching tiles. So having 5 tiles of the same kind is much better than having 5 different tiles that you're likely to have to drop off later in the game. And also, as you can see, it is in fact matching sets that will score you the most points. Ghosts of the Moor. Now, first, the production values. The meeples are cute, but the board is too small. That is just a problem. That simply reduces the enjoyment of the game. The squares on the track are just the same size as the tile, or a little smaller, and they're really close to one another. As you've seen even in my video, they're just next to each other, and when you pick up one, you're likely to move another tile a little bit, and as that happens, the board starts looking messy. And as I'm playing a game, I don't want to have to spend time and mental energy rearranging the tiles to make sure that everything is where it's supposed to be. The last part of the track is really narrow, and that means that if you're sitting on one side of the board, it just looks like a blob of tiles and meeples, and from that direction you really don't know if your meeple next is supposed to go this way or this way to proceed. It just looks undifferentiated. It probably would have been more expensive to have a larger board with larger squares, but it also would have made gameplay more intuitive and less cumbersome. These are not big things, but still, we all noticed that. As for gameplay, I played the game with adults and with children, with my 8-year-old. With the adults, we played the game and then it's almost like we hadn't played it. It didn't really leave an impression on any of us, positive or negative. It's almost like, okay, we played the game. No one really commented about it, but not because I thought, oh, they had horrible things to say, wanted to be nice. No, my friends are not like that. They tell me what they think, which is great. That's why they're my friends. It's almost like, okay, what's next? It's almost like people didn't have much to say about it. There isn't anything that stood out as wrong, but not anything I was like, wow, look at this, fun. Everything was just, I don't know, solid B in terms of grades. Just a solid average, but it didn't have that quintessential, mysterious, ineffable quality that sends a tingle down your spine as you're playing a game and you're excited to see what happens next, or you're considering interesting, grueling possibilities. Everything was just okay, but it felt bland. I don't think that the problem is that it's a small, simple game, because you have simple light fillers that are just incredibly exciting. The resistance, the rules are not much more complicated than this one. Of course, that's an epic game. What happens is just that the decisions that you had were okay. The randomness sometimes could be annoying, but for maybe also a part is the number of players. Playing it with 5 people, then you just have 2 meeples, and then the randomness is really huge, and then you don't have much control. You're gonna end up dropping an artifact that would destroy a set, and because of that one roll, the set of 4 or 5 becomes a set of 4, and someone else's has a set of 5. That one die roll that changes the result of the game. Of course, it makes the entire progression of the game feel a little bit trivial. So it's an okay game, especially I guess if you play with no more than 3 players, so that you have enough choices. But even then when it counts at the end, by definition there will be a part of the game in which you have only 1 meeple. And I guess you can try to reduce that by keeping as many meeples as you can on the board, to keep your options open, but then somebody else rushes through, gains those tokens at the end, and is lucky not to lose too many artifacts, and then they are gonna win. So it really feels like it's better, I wouldn't say safer, to try to get lucky and to be lucky, but it's such a strong strategy, or just such a strong possibility that somebody will win because of luck against somebody that has been planning carefully, that feels a little bit anticlimactic. In general, just moving those meeples and choosing if I'm going to move this one or that one didn't feel all that exciting. When I played the game with my daughter, Amelia, she loved it. And it's possible that it's also in part because we were playing only 2 players, 5 meeples each, more choices. But she just loved it. She found that the art was hilarious, the theme was hilarious, that you're dropping off a ghost, hoping the dice tap on it. All of those things made perfect sense for her. I don't know, maybe because we watched so much Scooby-Doo and there's a little bit of element of that here. She loved the idea, and so she found it very enjoyable. Now, those challenges of considering what to do and where to go were particularly interesting to her agile mind. Something else that still was annoying is that if you have 5 meeples, of course, this section of the board are not numbered, and it's not obvious because of the various bands. You roll a 5, then you don't see at a glance where your meeple is gonna go, especially when those bands are tight. So if you have 4 meeples, each of them, before you make the decision, you have to count where it will go. And so that also is a little bit cumbersome. A board with numbers under each space would have been less pretty and thematic, but also much more functional. I'm sorry I keep complaining about the board, but that is just something that that we didn't like all that much in the way it functions. It looks cute though. Now, so this is a game that I would recommend if you're planning to play with children. Then this programming movement, planning, collecting sets and playing with this thing, that's likely going to work. My daughter really loved it, asked me if she were gonna play it more, and I think I'm gonna play it more at some point because I enjoy seeing her enjoying it so much. This, however, is not a game that would also double as a game to play during main game night with adults, not even as a filler, not even as a warm-up, because you had to set up this board, place all those tiles there, and at the end you get the sense that yes, you're making some decisions around those die rolls, but those are not necessarily all that fun or all that interesting or all that exciting. It's an okay game, it's not a horrible game, but I don't have anything that is particularly exciting to say about it. It's okay with kids, but it just didn't work all that well with my friends. It didn't bomb, but it also was nothing special.